Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, and I'm on my own this week to talk about Better Call Saul Season 5, Episode 3. It's called The Guy for This. So, full spoilers for the episode. As always, Connor is on vacation for a few days, and we didn't want to push the episode review back to the end of the week. So, I'm here, I'm on my own, I'm going to talk about it. It's a shame that I'm on my own because this might have some of the best character work of the season so far. Now, it's only Episode 3, admittedly, but the Kim and Saul stuff this episode was fantastic. The episode, was maybe a little on the nose with some of its visual metaphors. Obviously, it opens with the ice cream cone that fell last week, and the ants kind of swarming it and consuming it, and then we see it later on in the episode. Very over the top in what it's doing, but really fun stuff because it kind of it's really easy to see how this relates to Saul's story, right? This idea of if you think of the ants as all the people who are going to try and use him now, and all the people are going to try and take advantage because now he's put himself out there as this lawyer and he's going to be consumed by it. And he's already feeling the effects of that by being dragged into this plot with Lalo and Nacho. And Domingo, aka Crazy 8, who I've forgotten is that character every single season. Every year, there is a moment early on in the season where I'll forget his name, and then someone will say, "Hey, don't you know that's Crazy 8 from Breaking Bad?" And then I'll go, "Oh yeah." Every year, without fail, that happens. But that's of course why they've taken Saul in, and the scene with Saul and Lalo where he first meets them in the garage is phenomenal. The performances here are really good, particularly from Odenkirk. The way he nervously ticks at various points and tries to... I was feeling uncomfortable and uneasy when he was trying to say that he couldn't do it, or try to say that he'd maybe recommend the phone instead, and tried to talk him out of using him in this capacity to go in as a lawyer and pass on this information that they wanted Domingo to tell the law enforcement, who obviously later on we see exactly what law enforcement that's going to be when Hank and Gomez make their glorious return to the Breaking Bad universe. So that was exciting. They give him a big entrance, of course, shooting from behind, and obviously it's him, and they do the whole thing with the badge up against the glass, the ID rather. Really good stuff. But the way Odenkirk kind of there's one moment in particular where so when he first arrives in the garage, Saul kind of keeps saying, I think this is about me not being able to do a great job with Nacho, but I did get him out. He sort of rambles for a little bit, and then when Lalo and that make it clear that that's not why he's there, that they require his services as a lawyer, Saul kind of says, he goes, for a second there I thought it was going to be, I can't even remember what the line was. It was something like making a OD on heroin or something like that. It was some sort of weird thing, but something dark that obviously Saul wouldn't want to do. And Lalo kind of smells and says, "Oh, maybe later," and he's just cracking a joke, and it's not even an intimidating joke, I don't think, on its own. He's Lalo's kind of intimidating by default, but I don't think the joke itself was supposed to be threatening. But Saul still, his reaction when he kind of smiled and laughed at the joke, he had this little moment in his face where he just kind of looked terrified, and it was perfect. It was a perfect moment. So they want to have Domingo to pass on this information to law enforcement, making it appear as if he is ratting out who he works for. They don't reveal it till later that who he's actually ratting out essentially is Gus. Gus is, not Gus himself by naming him, but his operation. The dead drops, the money that he's pointing them to is actually money that belongs to Gus. And that's the big scene. Again, maybe my favorite scene in the episode is Saul goes to see Crazy, and we see the sort of start of their scene and him explaining what's going on. And then when Saul's waiting outside, it's when we get Hank's big entrance where the car comes in, and it's very over the top and dramatic, and in a good way though. I'm not really complaining about this. This was exciting, and they're in talking to him, and Saul he starts talking to Hank, Domingo, and he starts explaining about how this works, and within a couple of sentences, Saul's banging at the door, as if presenting to us that he's just seen these DEA agents go in, and he wants to go in and protect his client, and he goes in. But even though that's how it's presented to us, with him sort of watching outside, it could easily play as, of course, as him waiting on them arriving because that's his cue. And immediately I'm like, this is a ruse. All of this is an act. Saul coming in here to talk to Domingo and try to talk him out of talking to them is all part of the act. But what's beautiful about it is that Hank also suspects this. Hank being one of the better, smarter characters in, Breaking Bad, like, he immediately is like, I feel like my chain's being jerked here, and he's not willing to give it time. He's ready to walk, and it's a testament to Saul's abilities as a con man, essentially, that he's able to sort of still talk him into it over time. But they have to give him a lot of, conditionals. They have to say, oh, hey, we you'll get a rest, and if you don't get a rest, then he can walk. And he's very hesitant for that final point, but Saul does get him there, and ultimately, he sits down. And one of my favorite little touches in the scene, at the end of the scene, is before it cuts away and Domingo's finally explaining these dead drops, Saul kind of turns and he's kind of listening intently, and it's basically he's also, because earlier on when he first seen him, he said, hey, are you good at memorizing things? And he hands him like a script essentially of things that he needs to tell the cops. And it's like Saul also memorized it, and he's just listening very carefully to what Domingo's saying so that he knows if he makes a mistake or if he needs to step in and like sort of correct him or something. Like, he's being very, very careful. And I like that. He's not, I don't even think he's mouthing the words. You can just tell that's what he's doing, that he's just listening and making sure he says what he's supposed to say. But it's all part of the ruse. And then Saul goes to Lalo afterwards, and he tries to sort of get out of ever working for him again, but Lalo's like, nah, you'll find time. But there is a nice moment where he tries to make sure that Domingo doesn't get actually counted as a snitch, because he's essentially a snitch now. He's like an actual criminal informant for Hank, but he's essentially a double agent criminal informant, if that makes sense. And Saul refers to him as like a direct line to the DEA if he ever wants to like pass information on. But because of this, you might actually get intel back at some point that he's a snitch, because someone might catch him doing this, even though he's doing it for Lalo, and he's supposed to be doing it. So Saul is still kind of looking out for him and doesn't want him to die. A fact that Lalo finds kind of amusing, but he... it's Saul. As much as he's a bit of a sleazebag, he does kind of have a heart, and it's it's just that thing where you can't just completely hate him, which we talk about a lot. And Nacho, likewise in this scene, like, you're in, and it's later on he's telling Gus all this, and Gus basically has to accept that he has to let these dead drops go, because if he does move them or alter them in any way, it'll be obvious that someone spoke to him. So they have to keep up the appearance. He's not happy about it. Gus looks pissed, but that's kind of how it is. So that stuff's good, but there's a moment sort of halfway through this plot where it's after the first time he meets Lalo, before the next day where he goes in to meet Crazy 8, and he comes home and Kim's up in the balcony of the apartment, and she's drinking some beer, and he goes up, he gets a beer to have with her, brings her one, and he takes her empty one off of her, and he puts the bottle on the sort of the ledge of the balcony, right? And it's sort of, and the ledge is just thick enough for this bottle, right? So it could very easily get knocked over and fall to the ground below. And they're a couple of floors up, so it's quite a drop. And she's kind of staring at it through the scene as he's kind of discussing that he's had a kind of a rough day, but not like, he's made a lot of money. Saul Goodman's made the most money he's made so far. It's very financially successful. And, Kim has this line that I love the delivery here. Where she's like, oh, good for Saul, and it sounds very, like she's still, as much as she's at face value to Jimmy accepting of this Saul stuff, like this is still kind of hurting her, I think, and it just does a little bit of an attitude with the way she says that. But she keeps staring at this bottle, and I was reading this moment as kind of like, Jimmy always kind of lives life on the edge, right? And this bottle's literally on an edge, and he's willing to let it sit there and not care about it, and he won't even pay it attention. But when she decides that she has to go back in and get ready for her work the next day, she makes a point of picking it up because she's responsible and she cares and so on. And what's so neat about this, I didn't even think about this until now, but him saying that he had kind of a rough day, but financially it was the most successful one he's had, is actually a really wonderful, segue almost into Kim's plot, because Kim's actually in quite a good mood right now. I mean, besides maybe her mood appearing in this because of Jimmy's presence and kind of the awkwardness of it, but she's in a good mood from her job's perspective because she's happy that her next day is nothing but cases helping people who are in need of a lawyer, right? She's not doing any Mesa Verde stuff with the bank or any of that. She's doing just, because that was a big plot line last season, right? Which was not really brought up yet this season, but that was a big thing for her towards the end of last season, was that she wants to get into more normal law practice again. She wants to help people. And she's happy that she's got a full day of doing nothing but that. And we see her in court, and she's talking to, she's in court, she's talking to the judge, and she's talking to her client, and it doesn't go quite well for this girl that they're trying to, get her out of this thing. And she just takes her and says, okay, that wasn't great, but we'll get a proper, a new deal now, and we'll see how we can go from here, and we'll try and do our best. This was a long shot anyway. And she's trying to help, but the entire time her assistant's coming up with the phone and saying, hey, so-and-so is calling from Mesa Verde, or from the other law firm that she works at, and asking her for her time. And the boss is like, hey, like, you have to get out there and deal with this thing. There's a property dispute, you have to go. And she's not very happy about it. She tries to wriggle her way out of it, but he's like, hey, this is the I mean, he says, I appreciate that you want to take these type of cases, and I'll always support, but like, Mesa Verde is what puts, that keeps the lights on, what puts food on the table, right? Do you understand that? And she's like, yep, of course, I'm on my way. So she has to let someone else handle her cases for the day, and she has to drive out into the sort of the big, empty site, mostly empty site, of where they're going to build this, call center or bank branch or whatever they're doing. And there's this one house left, surrounded by nothing, and she has to talk to this guy who doesn't want to leave. He built his house. Him and his family built his house in the 70s, but they technically never, purchased the land. They were leased the land from a company, which in their contract, even though they technically had the lease for 100 years, they were allowed to be bought out at any time for the value of the property plus $5,000, which obviously isn't that a whole lot. And Kim tries to tell him that, hey, it's up to 18,000, and he gets kind of sarcastic about what he can do with 18 grand. And even in like 2003, 2004, whenever the year this is, I always forget the exact year of this, but still not a lot of money for starting a new life in a new house, right? So she tries to convince him and tries to talk to him. And this scene, like, as good as Saul's stuff was, this was kind of the scene, and the couple of scenes that she has with this guy, this homeowner, I think is where dramatically some of the best stuff of the episode comes from, because I love how kind of layered it is and complex it is, because there's times in this conversation where I felt like she was getting mad at him because he was reminding her of some Jimmy in some ways. At one point she gets mad and yells at him and says, well, you think the rules don't apply to you? All your neighbours left. All your neighbours gave up their houses because they followed the rules. But you think you're special and you don't get to follow the law? And when she was saying that, I was like, oh man, is this kind of like, aimed at Jimmy a little bit? Is this, the way Jimmy always tries to sort of get what he wants and tries to, work outside the parameters and do, any means necessary, that kind of thing. But then there's also parts of this scene where I felt it was more about her own guilt, about her and what she's doing, and especially when he says, I know your type, you're this rich person who comes down in your fancy suit, and you don't know what people like me have to put up with. You have this comfortable life. You probably volunteer at a soup kitchen once a year. Maybe you give to charity a little bit every month to make yourself feel better, to make yourself feel like you're making up for all the bad things you do. And I was getting this double whammy of stuff for Kim here, where on one hand it's like, is this kind of like so there's two ways this guilt is coming here. One is purely financially, in the sense that part of the reason why she wants to help people is because she does feel like she's the big bank account and doing all this business law is unfulfilling to her, because it is just making money, and it's doing this to people and things like that. But then I also think there's some guilt about her kind of like letting Jimmy away with things and not like sort of breaking that off when she knows she should, or not changing that when she knows she should. Like I was getting like layers of things in here, and what I think makes this such a rich plot to explore, and such a rich and what makes these characters so great is that there are multiple sides to it, where I was, the scene after this, when she comes back later that night, when she's supposed to be going home, and but she drives back to the guy instead, after yelling at him because he didn't want to leave. Because she gave him an ultimatum. She says, look, it's not even going to be 18,000 anymore, it's going to be 10,000, and if you don't leave tomorrow, then we can enforce this. The sheriff's going to come in, you're going to be dragged out of your house, and you can just deal with it. And she storms off. But she comes back at the end. Or later on that night, and she comes back that night, and she comes back and she comes in and kind of like forces her way in, and tries to talk to him, and he's like, say what you've got to say. And she's looked up houses for him. She's got like printouts of houses that'll be in his price range. And she's got, hey, this one's a bit older, but it's got a nice view, nice neighborhood. This one's got this, and she tries to explain that, hey, you'll own this forever. Like whatever house you get to take here, you'll buy and you'll own, and it'll be great. And it's kind of this thing where, on the one hand, she's trying to make herself feel better, but on the other hand, you do feel that she genuinely wants to help him, and she's trying her best. But he doesn't really accept it. He's very cold and very stone-faced throughout most of it. And then ultimately, when he does kind of like start speaking, he accuses her of being someone who will say anything to get what she wants. And this kind of stung in a way, because it was like, that sounds like Jimmy. That doesn't sound like Kim necessarily. That sounds like Jimmy. And maybe that's where some of that guilt of like the influence Jimmy has on her, and because we spoke about how last week that was kind of weighing on her because she didn't want to lie to her client. She wanted to do it properly. And what's funny is that Jimmy does have that heart where he does try to help people, and it's kind of the little person that he usually, sticks his neck out for in a lot of ways. And it maybe actually further shows why they are, like, they do have this connection. There is something between them. And but so much of this was about her guilt, about, not helping the little people and doing this big account and being this rich. And she tries to bond with him. She tries to make it clear that she was poor, that her mother was poor. They were always running from landlords for rent. And she does relate. She never had a house growing up. And it gives her some of her past that kind of like makes us a little bit more rich. But what I love about all this is that when she comes home, the final scene of the episode is she comes home, and just like before, she arrives, just like Jimmy did earlier, and she looks up, and it's Saul that's on the balcony, right? He's up there drinking a beer, he's got the 6-pack out, he's waiting for her, and they start smoking together like they have in the past, and they have no lines of dialogue, really. They just stand there, and she has the beer, and after they're standing in silence a little bit, he starts kind of dangling his bottle over the edge as if, he's like, being really risky, like it might fall. He's just dangling it from his fingers. And she just grabs the bottle and throws it off the balcony. And then he does the same thing. And then she takes the next one out of the 6-pack and throws it off. And it's this cathartic thing for them, especially her. And it's funny because I think this episode is really neatly divided between them, in the sense that they both have these rough days, and then they come home, and then the other one's there. And when Jimmy comes home the first time, like, she is, nice enough to him, but she kind of like makes an excuse to go and do work and kind of, backs out. And I think what's beautiful about this ending is that it reminds us once again what they do actually offer each other. There's a reason why, like, they work for each other, right? There's a reason why she finds comfort in him, and there's a reason why he finds comfort in her. And it's not always because of bad reasons. Like, there's a lot of kind of elements to the relationship that feel unhealthy and feel like it can lead to, probably the inevitable demise of it. But there is a thing here where he is there for her. There is this comfort to him. And, like, like, maybe she does get herself wrapped up too much in the right and wrong of things, and her conscience and all the rest of it. But I think it's beautiful. I love this ending. This ending was like, it's one of those things where it's like, there's elements to this episode where you can kind of like see coming a mile off, and it's that moment where, Saul arrives back at the courthouse or whatever, and that ice cream cone's been consumed by ants. It was, if anything, I'd almost argue it was a little bit too cheesy that like he kind of encountered that again. But like, I mean, I'm not really complaining because it was a nice moment, but like, you can kind of see that kind of beat coming, right? You're sort of seeing, oh, okay. But when they took that earlier balcony scene and then did it again at the end, but had her kind of like join in and let go and want to feel like she's not just a business suit anymore. She wants to feel a bit more alive. And that's what he represents to her. And sometimes she tries to fight it, and he does go too far, and she has to kind of be aware of that. But he does offer her something. There is a comfort there. There's there's a there's a loved one there, right? There's someone who actually helps get through this life, that when it's a struggle, when it's something that she can't handle, he's there, and that part's comforting. So it's one of these things where, even though we had the moment at the end of last season where, okay, this is the moment where he became Saul Goodman, this is the moment where he's really gone down that path, it's not like a switch where all of a sudden he's just like this villainous dude and she doesn't see any of the good still in him. He's still him. He's still gradually becoming what we know as Saul Goodman. Which, by the way, just to go back to Hank, being aware that there was something fishy and he felt like he was being played. Even the fact that he instantly got the name and started laughing about "It's all good, man," was good. It was a great little moment for him. So now I love the Kim and Saul stuff here, partly because it's so layered and conflicting. I think there's parts of it where some of what she's going through is kind of because of her feelings towards Saul right now, and because of what he's kind of either encouraging in her or putting her through, or where he's put her in her life right now. But at the same time, by the end of the episode, I was like, yeah, but he does offer a lot of other things too. It's not just, two-dimensional. There is genuine layers to these characters and how they feel about each other and what they need from each other and how they cause each other problems, but also offer each other in terms of positive things. And I mean, maybe Kim offers Saul more positive things, or sorry, maybe Saul offers a lot more problems for her than vice versa. But there is something there, and it's not clear cut, and I love that. I still want to root for them, like I really do. So yeah, there you go. That was beautiful. So some of the other stuff, some of the other sort of small subplots is Mike and Nacho, Mike and Nacho, Pyrrha kind of scenes. Mike's in a bar, he's drinking, and he wants the postcard removed from the bar. That reminds him of Werner. Wiegler, that's it, the German name. And he's getting kind of angry at the bartender to the point where you're really kind of against Mike, and he's losing his temper. But then he says please, and the bartender kind of gets it, and not enough to know the details, but he's like, okay, fine, I'll take it down for now. But he gets confronted by these assholes on the way home who try to essentially mug him, and Mike just breaks one of their arms. Like it's like, you just know at the start of the scene, like, don't mess with Mike. The Mike scenes were fine. They're kind of like, right now, the Mike scenes, this episode and last episode, they're kind of like, they're not as exciting as a lot of the rest of the plot, because we're in this place. It's kind of like the start of season 4 with Saul, where after the death of Chuck, like, all of the drama of getting to those final beats with Chuck, that afterwards, early on in season 4, Saul was kind of in a weird, like, after place where he was still sort of suffering from those effects, but he wasn't necessarily marching towards, like, the more intriguing stuff in his character, right? And we kind of got through that, and obviously now we're, like, way into, like, deeper stuff. Mike's kind of in that place right now, I think, at least for me, where his scenes are solid. They're solid stuff. But ultimately, like, him getting angry at the bartender, him fighting this guy, him yelling at Kaylee, all that stuff, like, it's pretty straightforward in a way that, Saul often, the show that is obviously kind of, like, Saul typically, like, is very playful and intelligent with how it presents its drama and how enriched its character dynamics are. I mean, everything I've said about Kim and Saul in this episode and how there's layers to it. Like, I feel like with Mike here, it suffers a little bit in comparison because there isn't as many layers to it. It's very straightforward and just kind of one note sounds really negative, and I don't mean it to be negative because it's solid. It's just there's nothing wrong with it, but the actual layers and the motivations for him sort of getting back into things are going to be the more exciting parts of his story, I think. And for now, we're kind of waiting to see where it takes us. It's just kind of ticking that along, and it's just, again, it's solid. There's nothing wrong with it. Nacho, his father comes to visit him, and tells him it's the first time he's seen his house, his apartment, and he talks about how it's nice, big and new and fancy, and it's very awkward. And I love the silhouette shot. They sit down with coffee at the sort of the breakfast table, and it's like right against the window, so they have this harsh light. Very, the tone of the scene is represented very well in the cinematography and the lighting and the color tone. And basically his father's like, oh, so-and-so made an offer on the store. He offered more than it's worth. And I kind of got where this was going, actually. He accuses Nacho of being behind it. Like, Nacho wants him to retire and move away so that he's safe, but he's not willing to run. He's offended at the idea that he might have to run. So he's like, no, you should turn yourself into the police, get away from this, but I am never running. And he gets angry, kind of, leaves. And Nacho's kind of left in this rough place because Nacho really wants to make sure his father's safe. And that's actually, it's funny that Hank's in this episode because this reminds me, to an extent, obviously Walt wasn't constantly like thinking about Hank, but the way like Hank sort of like his demise came because of Walt and like that devastating moment that finally happened, it kind of reminds me of that a little bit, just in the dread I'm feeling of it building to it, and building to Nacho's father finally becoming a victim of what Nacho's a part of. I'm kind of dreading that, and it was making me think of that a little bit, just in the sense that someone in Walt's life met their demise because of they're associated with him. And I feel like, and obviously Hank was more directly involved because he was actually hunting the bad guys, but some interesting stuff. And that was basically it. But like I say, it was all the Kim and Saul stuff that was really singing for me this episode. Especially once Kim's stuff took center stage in the back half of the episode, and it kind of made it this twofer where they both kind of equally got their share of the episode. And it was like, here's Saul's bad day in the follow-up, here's Kim's bad day in the follow-up, and just how, despite everything else, they're still there for each other and comfort each other. Yeah, that's beautiful stuff. And Kim, letting go at the end and smashing the balls, and they have to run inside, of course, because there's people waking up and try to see what the noise is. There's vandals on the street. What's going on? But there you go. That is Better Call Saul. I think I hit everything. It's a bit harder to keep track of everything when you're doing this on your own, but hopefully I hit everything that I need to hit there in terms of the episode. Actually, one bit of cinematography I want to point out. I mentioned the silhouette with Nacho and his father. I love the shot when his father left, and there's a shot where we see it's like we're outside the building, but Nacho has a lot of windows at that side of his apartment, and his father's walking outside to the gate, because it's sort of, you go down this walkway past all these windows to get to the gate, and Nacho's still sitting at the breakfast table inside. And what's wonderful about this shot is that it's almost a 50-50 split. And in the left side, it's his father walking outside in the bright daylight. It's orange, it's sunny, it's, freedom. There's green grass, and there's birds chirping. I mean, probably not literally, but it feels like there is. And then in the other half of the screen, Nacho's behind the window. So there's a barrier there. But not only that, he's in this dark, at least by comparison, area. And it feels colder, it feels dim, and it feels like he's in this darker world than his father is. And it's just a visual representation of like what their dynamic is right now. And it was just one of those wonderful little touches that I appreciate. So there you go. That's Better Call Saul, episode 3 of season 5. Let me know what you thought of this one in the comments below. Feel free to mention anything that I have missed or any thoughts and opinions that you have on this episode. Like and subscribe, all the usual stuff. Ding the bell on YouTube for notifications. If you want to support the show, you can do that by rating the podcast on Apple Podcasts. Give us 5 stars and a review. Helps more people find us. You can, of course, also support us financially over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV for as little as $1 per month and get some bonus stuff, bonus episodes of some of our movie podcasts. $5 gets you voting rights on some things and early access to others. So yeah, go have a look. But otherwise, that is me. So thank you once again for watching or listening. I always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, guys. Have you got any vanilla?